Well, Joe, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to Mindful Conversations, and I'm super excited to have you. How are you?
Oh, thank you so much, Elia. Thank you so much for having me. I feel so blessed to be able to be here with you on this first
This is the
process
first
that you're
episode.
going through. It's the first episode, yeah. Amazing.
You know what's crazy? It's that the first episode that I did my conversations for Self Care Saturdays on Instagram, I did it with you, or it was one of the
Yes.
first ones. But for some reason, I'm not the most tech person, so it didn't record or it didn't save. And so this, at least, I know for sure. Chris is going to take care of it. He's going to save it and he record it. So I'm super thankful for that, and I'm super grateful that you're here.
Thank you so much for
Yes.
having me.
So I was at your retreat. I was there for a couple of days. I could not, join the rest of it, but I've been watching it on YouTube. The rest of it, I've been watching it on YouTube, and it's amazing. It's amazing. I mean, from the very first one, I remember I texted you right after, and I said I needed to hear that song. That song just like broke me down. Not broke me, but it made me surrender.
It's bound to do that. That Bhagavan, it was Krishna Das, I think, the song, and just such a blessing to be able to hold the space for the folks, and this virtual platform that we've been using. It's incredible because you can touch so many lives and reach so many people through it. And so this was basically our first online retreat, 7-day online retreat, and it was it was an incredible experience. So much transformation. I think we had so much assistance too from the universe in that process, because we had the Lionsgate portal was open, and so this was like all accelerated growth for humans that came into that retreat. So, and it fell kind of right on the same dates as when we planned it. So it was just an absolute like big blessing to hold space for all the people and to see the transformation that was taking place um, during the week.
Yes. And by the way, Joe has a retreat center called Ramaorganica in Costa Rica, which I'm planning to visit. One of these days, I will visit for sure. Yes. Yes. So, I mean, it's amazing. The work that you do is so amazing. I mean, you came from being a professional athlete and having that mindset of winner's mindset. It's like, I have to do it. I gotta, it's not just that I want to have it, it's that I have to have it. That's the winner's mindset, right? I have to have it. So going from that mindset to a spiritual mindset where it's like you come to a place of complete surrender, and it's like, here I am. How did you make that transition? Because I know a lot of athletes have a hard time after they retire. They have a hard time, adjusting to a regular lifestyle.
It's
How
such
did
an
you adjust it? Yeah, how did you adjust it from, going from that incredible, winner's mentality, athlete mentality, to a spiritual guru, basically?
I recognize that the guru is inside every one of us, and it's like, but it's such a beautiful question, because this was all like part of the sharings also through the retreat was basically it was a lot to do with how in these establishments we get, we're driven and we're so motivated to win, and we kind of become these machines. And through the process, it actually brought me to two places where I had somewhat of a spiritual awakening, because I've been doing things over and over and over in the same way for so many years, playing professional sports. And then I came to a point where I had a dark night of the soul, where I was not in concurrence with what was coming up for me. And I really felt like I needed a massive change. And so that was towards the end of my career. And I also had a couple of things that happened that dissolved some of the ego structure and my kind of conditioning and where I'd been, what I'd done, who I think I am. When you come to the end of, your playing days, it can be very daunting and it can be scary for people. I suppose it's just the same for someone who's been in a job for, 30 years of their life, and then they come to the end of it. And so once that had happened, I started to really think like, okay, so who am I? That question came, and I had a bit of an existential crisis towards the end, where I was really looking within and saying, hey, are you Joe the rugby player? And so these questions came up for me. And then even the fact that, am I this body? Am I my mind? Am I this conditioning from where I've come and who I think I am, my self-image, the projections, the concepts, the ideas, all of these things, I started to really like contemplate and say, hey, but, and then reflect and look within to find those answers. And that led me onto the spiritual path, where I took a lot of my ego from the rugby into my spiritual path. And then I was dedicated to become the best meditator. and win at meditation. But you would relate to me with this. It's like, it's not necessarily about being the best in spirituality, it's at all.
And again, that's the ego, right? It's the ego. Yeah. It's like so self-righteous. I'm the best, I meditate 5 hours a day. Yes. Yeah. And then you're like, oh, geez, that's still, the ego is still there.
The ego was wanting to be special, and wanting to kind of become the best meditator then. But through all of these processes, and then cleansing the heart more and dropping from the mind into the heart, I started to realize that all of these spiritual practices, they lead us back to what we are as presence. And so all of the striving within that there's no point, because, and then also the other realization is that, do you have to practice to be yourself?
Wow.
So maybe the reflex to want to like associate with the story, or want to identify with the story in our minds. But at some point, I also started to recognize that, hey, wait a minute, Chad, like I am actually already whole. It's just my association with my thoughts and when they arise, and how I'm identifying with that, because that actually then creates your reality. So obviously we can't see that when we're very much in our minds, and we have this, almost this clinging of mind, and we want to be, associated with that story so much and believe in it. So it can be very hard for some people to actually recognize that they need to create space between what they are and that, and so that for me was like some of the realization just through the path. But as you mentioned, you can easily transfer the ego into whatever it is you're doing, and then start to, that spiritual ego, like it's like what I wear, how I talk, but at the end of the day, it just really comes down to what you are. And it's you see that through the process there, and you learn the hard lesson.
Absolutely. Yes. And like you said, like I can relate so much with you to your story too. It's like you come down to learning that you're not the body, you're not the mind, you're not even your thoughts. It's like you are yourself. But like you said, it's a process. It's a process getting to that step, getting to that point where you understand like who you are, and that everything else is just like layers and layers of, ideas and beliefs that don't even belong to you, ideas and beliefs that were like, programmed by society, by the, environment that you grew up, parents, family, school, everything, all of this, we have this like reprogramming in our brain. And so it's a process, because you have to start reprogramming your brain, your thoughts, and getting rid of all those toxic, it's toxic, getting rid of all those toxic thoughts, and allowing yourself to be yourself, to be free, right? It's like it's a process. It's definitely a process, because otherwise you get caught into that ego. Even when you're going through that spiritual process, you still get caught into that ego, where it's like, oh yeah, I meditate 5 hours a day, I meditate in the morning and night, and yeah, I'm super spiritual. And that's still the ego talking, that's still the ego being the self-righteous, showing off, instead of showing yourself, showing for yourself, Yeah. And you also get caught into that judgment. You start judging people, but I went through the same kind of similar like you, that where I wanted to become a vegetarian and vegan, and oh my god, you're eating meat, oh my god, you're not praying, you're not practicing mindfulness, and it's like again, you get caught into that and you start judging. And then I stop myself, and same thing is like, I'm like, wait a minute, I'm judging somebody else for not doing what I want, but it's like, it's my problem, it's not their problem, it's my problem for wanting to create this, change in somebody else, but it's not the problem, it's my problem. I'm just projecting my own issues of, judgment and wanting to change someone by force, kind of.
No, it's I can relate so much to you right there, because it was the exact same thing for me. Once I'd come into that path, and then I started to make the shifts and start to, look at my diet and what I've been putting in my body, all of these things. Once I had made that shift, I would go to the restaurant, and I would look at someone and they'd order a steak, and I'd be like, I wouldn't be announcing it. It would be in my mind, but my mind would be like, oh, look at them, they're eating steak, And then, but then from another perspective, like 20 years before that, I was eating steak almost every day. Exactly. So it's like,
Yeah. My favorite food was steak. Till this day, it was my favorite. It's like my favorite food. What's your favorite meal? I'm like, steak. It was like, and then all of a sudden it was like, ooh, you're eating steak. It's like so wrong. You're wrong.
That's another thing. That's another thing about it, is that, like our ego actually separates, So if it's judgment, separation, so actually by doing that, like, we're not really being aware of actually that all that we're doing is creating separation, as opposed to like just accepting people for where they're at, and then just being with that, But yeah, this is all part of the lessons as you grow and as you work through things.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a process to get to that point of unconditional love.
Oof. A lot of inner work.
Where you can actually love your enemies. Oof. Which I never thought it was possible. Honestly, I never thought it was possible. Now I can say thank you. Now I can say thank you. I love you. What's that?
There's like, I know what you're talking about. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I love you. Please forgive me. I'm sorry.
Yes.
I love you.
I love you. Absolutely. That's where but it took me years to get to that point. I mean, it's not an easy process. There must be an easy formula to do it, but hopefully there is, because it took me from like going all the way down. And honestly, I think that you do have to sometimes, the universe takes you all the way down, puts you in a position where you touch rock bottom. And then you're like, well, what am I doing? That's when you really humble yourself and let go of that ego. That's when you're definitely come to that humbling, position where like, oh my God, like I've been really, all of this, I've been living with the ego and pretending, basically. It's like wearing a mask.
It's like Ram Dass said, we all, what do you say? He said we're God dressed in drag.
Wow. Yes. Yes. Oh my God. Absolutely. Yes. So, going to that point where you hit for me, and I've seen this for a lot of people, that once they go to that dark point, you have two choices. You can either, go up, or you can stay there.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I feel like that was part of the biggest sharings that we had last week was all about that, because every single time, as you mentioned, every single time you're taken to that place, it's very humbling. And the other thing related to that for me is like, from our ego mind perspective, we want to create a reality. We want to project something into the future, or we want to create some kind of story around how we want it to be. And then the universe comes along and says, sorry, you wanted it this way, but unfortunately, that's not what is actually going to happen. And it's in those moments that you talked about the surrender, but you're doing yourself a service if you can, in those moments, if you can just be with that and say, okay, now how I'm not going to react to this. I'm just going to be with what is, and then I'm going to respond. And that's a very different thing from actually reacting and creating all sorts of other, either emotional reaction or whatever it is. But yeah, I see that so clearly now. I've been having lessons of myself in the process where because as you mentioned about the rugby and playing sport before, when you're used to getting what you want, you kind of will go all out to get that. But then from another perspective, it's like when you don't get that, how are you reacting to that situation? And so that's also a very big like barometer of where you are on the spiritual path, because if you have complete and utter trust that even if someone comes into your life and they're amazing in your life, and then they go and they pass, and you allow them to go, and you truly are in unconditional love, allowing them to go, then you can see where you are on the spiritual path. But if you are then attaching, or you're saying, no, I kind of like, I still want you to be here, and like this kind of thing, then you know that there's work to do, because it actually exposes what hasn't been burnt up, or what is still there to be seen, and said, hey, okay, I realize this, I recognize this. And I think that's where the full trust comes in, that whatever is coming into your life and leaving in your life, you got to trust that when it leaves, just recognize that whatever is coming will be better for you.
Better.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Oh my God. Yes. Yeah. Yes. I was just talking to some people, another coach. He's another coach. And I was talking to him, and he had just gone through a breakout. And I say, he's like, how do you get over a breakout? And I said, well, this is how you get over a breakout. The universe remove something that is good for you, because they have something much better for you. Oof. And that excites me when I mean, no, I'm not saying that I didn't like the previous person or something, but if like you said, I detach myself. I don't attach myself to the idea of he is the perfect, he is the one. If it works out, great. If it's meant to be, great. But if it's not, it's okay to let it go, right? And when you let it go, or when he needs to go, or that person or whatever it is, I had a business in Mexico and I have to let it go too. So when you let it go, you realize it's like, okay, like you said, you have to completely, fully trust that the universe, it's removing this thing away from you because it has something else much better for you. Something much better is there waiting for you, and it's coming. And that to me is like, doesn't that excite you? And he was like, actually, it does. Yeah. So when you change that mindset of why me, of life is happening to me, rather than life is happening for me, it's like, wow, let it come. That's when you completely surrender and be like, all right, let it come.
Oh, no, it's so powerful. It's so powerful, so powerful. Like, because I can feel your resonance, related to that. And that's exactly where I am right now with situations arising in my life, and just kind of, looking at every situation, whether it's difficult, good, bad, whatever it is, just looking at it. And as you said, just the shift of perspective, just being like, okay, am I going to be the victim of this situation, or am I a victor? And so I just changed the perspective. And when I shift that perspective, everything works out. It's all good, because it's, even though, I'm not saying that we're robots and that we don't feel, because that's another thing.
Yeah.
Is like, yes, maybe you'll be sad for a day or two, or maybe even a week, or maybe more, but
maybe 2 weeks,
also maybe 2 weeks. You just be with, just are with what is, but then also, like, as you mentioned, it really is like, is this happening for you, or is it happening to you? So I think that, like, there's many beings going around with that story in their minds that, oh, I'm getting hit by this now, oh, I'm getting hit by that now. But if you just shift the perspective, you actually see that everything is happening for you. Because even the hardest lessons, we can both agree on this, even the hardest lessons that we've been through in our lives, when we look back, we are always grateful for that lesson, because it brought us to where we need to be. So that's what we also need to, like, just like hold in our consciousness when we go through something tough, is also remember, like, at some point in time, I'm going to come through this. And when I come through this, there's going to be so many nuggets of gold there that I can take out and then, utilize them in my life.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if I had not gone through what I went through, I would not be here. I would not be a therapist. I mean, the whole reason I became a therapist is because I had to go to therapy. I was so, like, in a dark place, going from, like, anxiety and suffering from anxiety and depression and insomnia, to the point where I was like, I finally felt like I broke down and I felt like I need help. So I went and saw a therapist, and then I saw another therapist, and I was in therapy for quite a while. And because of it, I was like, everybody should go to therapy. And that's why I decided to become a therapist, because I knew how important it was. I knew how, I became so passionate about mental health, how important it is to keep that, mental, your thoughts, because you are, like I said, you are not your thoughts. But we get so caught up in, and we create that anxiety because we create that movie of that is not even happening, but it's happening in your mind. And if it's happening in your mind, it is real. It becomes real. Right? Yeah, no, so it's kind of like the law of attraction. The more the more you think about something, the more you're going to attract that thing, that same thing. So it is super important to keep your thoughts in check.
It's absolutely vital. I don't think there's anything more important, actually, because and that's what I was trying to, like, say earlier, is like we have this, like, reflex to our thoughts, and then it's, as you say, then this plays out in our mind. It's only in our mind, and then this happens in reality. And it's kind of like, I just feel that through the process of dissolving ego, we start to come more into our heart. And when we come more into our heart, we see we have the power to observe. And that observation is not caught in the bubble of what is presenting, and it's impersonal. So it's not like, I'm not like within that bubble and then observing. It's actually, I'm observing, but it's not caught in what it's observing, you know. And then then thoughts can pass, you know. But it's like, it's such a process, this, you know. It's just to go through that, to dissolve the ego structure, to recognize that there's things from our past that we may be, you know. I was speaking with one of the participants, and we had an implementation call, which was one of the calls that we speak with each one of the participants that joined the retreat. Mm-hmm. And he said to me in the meeting, he said, you know, I feel like I'm just not disciplined in my life. And I was like, I was just listening, witnessing it. And I within that, I heard a self-limiting belief. And that self-limiting belief has been believed in over and over and over and over again. And it's like you say, he's creating his reality of what he thinks he is. And through that process, I was just like, he came to every single day of the retreat. And at the end of the retreat, I got to speak to him again. And I said, Benjamin, I said, brother, listen to me. You need to become more self-aware that what is arising for you is not necessarily true. Because this thought that you keep reinforcing, that you're not disciplined, you have been, I'm going to tell you something, you are disciplined. You've been here at every single one of these days of the retreat, and you were on time every single time. So it's like, it's just a matter of helping beings see that, like, there are these stories going on and it's not true, you know?
Yeah.
And so,
yeah, it's that it goes down to, I'm not good enough. It is every single person that I have, you know, helped as a therapist. It goes down to three things. I'm not good enough. What I want is not available to me. And because I'm different, you know, I can't connect with others. It comes down to those three things. And when you think about it, it's like, well, I mean, so it's like changing that, you know, that mindset. Okay, you're not good enough, but wait a minute, you do this and this and this, you have all these abilities. Like, doesn't that make you good enough? You know, and just by being you, that makes you good enough, right? And then the whole idea of, well, because I'm different, I cannot connect, is like, well, everybody's different. Everyone is different. I mean, how boring would it be if we were the same? Right? Right? So everybody brings something different into this, you know, plate of, you know, the table of life. Everybody has to bring something different. You know, everybody has different skills and everything. So it comes down to those three different things. But yeah, like, you know, like then, like your Benjamin, like, he felt like he was not good enough because he was not being disciplined enough. And yeah, so it's changing that, you know, those thoughts, changing the idea of now, you know, and believing in yourself. I remember one of my therapists, he used to tell me, you have to believe in yourself. And I was like, but how? How do I believe in myself? Like, this is so hard. So it is a process. I'm not saying that it's just something like, you know, easy and quick. I mean, honestly, it took me years. If I have, I feel like I have a better recipe now for my clients, but what I went through, I'm grateful that I did, because I understand pain so much better. I understand the pain, you know, when somebody is in pain, when somebody is, you know, suffering from anxiety or depression or not feeling good enough, or, you know, self-worth or anything like that. You know, I understand that because I've been through all of that. And it's like, okay, don't worry, you're going to be fine. Everything's going to be okay. So yeah, I mean, but it is a process. It is a process, and it's not, you know, it's not something that, you know, it's just easy. But definitely changing that mindset is super important. So yeah, having people like you,
Mm,
you know, that have gone through a lot of things and can teach others to love themselves,
mm,
be loving, and just and the way you teach is such a loving way too. It's just loving. It's just love. I mean,
mm,
we talked about this before, where it just comes down to love. It really just comes down to love. Just loving your neighbor, loving everybody, getting
mm,
rid of those layers of, conditions, and just loving the person for being that.
mm, mm. Yeah, well, I think you're one of those beings, just lighting up the world, and I that was also like gives me goosebumps now, because it's exactly how the radiance that beams out of you is just this love, and this like big beautiful smile, and it's just like that's how because like it was interesting, because I was saying to the people, I was saying, how do you enter a room? How is Because do you need to talk to people, or do you just enter, and as you enter they just sense, like they sense that the love, they sense your being, they sense your radiance. There's no actual need to even communicate, because and I mean, maybe people aren't really aware of that, but like honestly, I feel that when I'm around you, I feel that like that energy of love and radiance and beauty, and it's like it's such a gift, because you don't actually have to say a word, and it's just the presence that's there, and it's such a beautiful thing. It's like I believe so much in energy too, like how we are carrying ourselves, and how we presenting, and how we rocking up, how we showing up to the world, how we, and that's for me is a massive part of this process, is just each and every single person that you see in your day. And as you mentioned, there was a saint, Neem Karoli Baba, and one of his things was love everybody, serve everybody, feed everybody. And
Mm.
one of those things is love everybody. And it's true, like you said it before, sometimes maybe it's hard to love your enemies, and go through processes like that. But as you dissolve more of this ego mind, like you start to just the heart's mature heart can just shine, and just so much love can come from there. And as you mentioned before, unconditional love. It's not conditional. It's not related to anything else. It's just coming from within. And so yeah, so being in your presence, I think that also kind of lights up that love, and when you can be in another being's presence, because we all know this as well. This is also another thing, is like when someone's very strong in their ego and they walk in the room, it's like, like, and then they come and they sit down, and the conversation is like, and kind of you can be in their presence. Maybe you have to work with them, or you have to be around them. It's fine. You can be in their presence. You can relate with their heart, and just be there. But then come into the presence with another being who is working on themselves, and that has done the work, and that is just
Mm.
present. It's love. It's love. It's
Yeah.
like bathing in each other's love.
Yeah.
It's a different thing.
Oh, absolutely. And like the first day that I was in your retreat, you talked about vulnerability. And to me, that is a key. That is a key, so important to be loving. What I was saying is that on your retreat, the first lesson was about vulnerability. And to me,
Mm.
that is a key. That's
Oh,
a key to allow somebody else to be themselves. And it allows, by being vulnerable, it allows you to be yourself. And it gives
mm,
permission to the other person to be themselves too.
mm,
So then
mm,
two beings being vulnerable and being
mm,
honest and being open and being real and just being themselves and being loving too. But more importantly, it's just, that you allow that person to be vulnerable too. So vulnerability for me it's a must. It's a key. for any kind of relationship, for any kind of intimate relationship.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. No, absolutely no doubt about it. Because I think also sometimes maybe people don't feel safe in a space, and then the container that they're in, they don't really feel like they're safe in that container, or that they can share in that way. And so that was very important for the retreats, is just creating that kind of container for the people to be able to get vulnerable with each other. And as you mentioned, I think that the intimacy within vulnerability is crucial, because it's like what actually happens is we create deeper bonds with other human beings when we can be intimate with them. I mean, when we can be vulnerable with them. And this it's almost like being intimate with each other, because, there's things maybe that we aren't necessarily proud of, or the things that we've done in our lives that, weren't aligned with truth. And so allowing another being to open up, to be vulnerable, is really, is definitely strengthening the bonds, the human bond, and just allowing for whatever there is that needs to come up or needs to be seen, let it come up, and we're here to support that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I 100% agree with that. Yes, you create that intimacy. And like you said, like, it's not just that romantic intimacy with another in a romantic relationship, but it's just that intimacy with anyone, even with your clients, with your people you're helping, like in a retreat, especially in a retreat, I would say. I'm jealous.
Please. I would love for you to come one day, and then we could spend some time together. I'd feel it would be such an honor. And yeah, but you're so right about the jungle and nature. It's so important for us to commune with nature. And I think also that's another big thing, is that a lot of beings have lost their connection with nature. Have really like lost the fact that we actually come from this Mother Earth, and that we are without that we cannot sustain. So it's kind of like, it's just getting back, that building that relationship once again with her. But it's definitely so soothing and so healing to be in the nature and in the forest.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I could not agree more with that. Yes, I love it. Thank you so much. Well, this was amazing. It was amazing having you. And yes, I cannot wait to chat with you another time.
Now, glutathione is a big word, but it's the body's own master antioxidant. So it's a scavenger for free radicals, for bacteria, and what's relevant now, viruses. This is new to the marketplace. There's no other product on the market that has the ingredient NACET.
And basically NACET increases the production of that glutathione that is in our body already to strengthen and enhance our immune system and keep it strong. Elevated sense of well-being. Supports muscle strength and endurance. Cognitive function. Powerful liver support. Energy. Helps blood sugar regulation. Superior bioavailability of key ingredients.
One of your best defenses against COVID is a strong immune system. Taking GSH Plus as a daily supplement does all that. And now we have the product out on the market.